This is the story of my backpacking trip through South America. I start in Ecuador, where I will learn Spanish and see other parts of the country. I continue traveling through the Colombian landscapes, from the desert to a 4-day hike in the jungle to the lost city. From there, I fly to Bolivia and meet my friend Aranca. Together we travel to great heights and the freezing cold. In Argentina, I only visit the northern part and check out the area of Salta and Buenos Aires. I cross the border to Brazil to see the Iguazu Falls and end the trip in Rio de Janeiro. We start off with a lunch after a 3-hour drive into the jungle, and coincidentally, our group was entirely Dutch, and we were joined with the guide Pedro and the translator David. The hike starts with a good climb to our first viewpoint. The guide told us that before it became a touristic spot, these hills used to be full of coca plants. The clouds were already threatening for hours, but then it finally poured out, and that was possibly the hardest thing on the trek. Around 12 o'clock every day it will rain very hard for a few hours, which is fine, but the nights were clammy, so every morning you had to start in wet clothing and wet hiking boots, but they would eventually dry during the morning walk. We arrived at the first camp and made excellent time. Luckily, all the beds were still free, so we wouldn't have to use the hammocks. We got a delicious meal and went to bed early, because at 5:30 our breakfast will be ready. Unfortunately, one of the girls didn't sleep at all, because she got sick overnight. She stays behind with our guide to sleep a little more and then has to decide if she can continue or needs to return home. This day, we would visit 2 indigenous towns. We were only allowed to film or photograph them if the guide told us they were okay with that. There is a belief among them that with a photo you take part of their soul, so we definitely wanted to respect that.
Who want a photo? We are just forced.
And bring to the woman. So the woman's in charge to do the mochilas. For what they use it. For the woman's, when she do the mochilas, she do a process and put all the thinkings of her in the mochilas. So it's gonna be como like a diary for her. It's very important. And what they use it for carrying agriculture, for babies sometimes, different style. For they can carry on everything in his back, or for sale.
Here at the camp we had lunch and found out that the other girl would continue on the back of a mule together with our guide. We had to wait a long time to see them, but this was an excellent spot just to dive into the river and go for a swim. Just before we arrived at camp for a break, it started pouring, but they prepared the best fruits for us to get some energy for the final dive. At the third camp, we got a little surprise when we arrived, a plate full of salty popcorn, which was more than welcome. We went to bed early again because the next morning we would start walking again at 6, so we arrived early at the lost city. Here, our stairway of 1200 steps would start. You needed to be very careful because the steps were uneven and very steep, and sometimes a bit slippery. We finally arrived at the entrance of the lost city. Still a lot more stairs to go in the park, but we have made it. It is time for a break, while our guide tells us with passion about the lost city and its history. The area was quite big and had a lot of other platforms than just the most known viewpoint. We were one of the first to arrive, which was great for taking photos, and saw many groups coming in. And luckily, the sky cleared up as well.
Voy a cantar esta canción con mucho cariño de mi corazón a la República Dominicana, la casa del merengue y la casa de la bachata. Voy a cantar esta canción con mucho cariño de mi corazón a la República Dominicana, la casa del merengue y la casa de la bachata. La casa del merengue, la y la casa de la bachata. Música, 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 te traigo música. Música, música, música de la República. ¡Ajá!
After finishing our tour in the lost city, we head all the way back to the place where we had lunch on the second day. This is our last night at camp, and our translator David promised us he would teach us some salsa moves, so this was the night. After a good rest, we leave again at 6 in the morning to the starting point of our trip. We were the last ones to leave, but what a phenomenal 4 days these were. Last night we heard some news that there were a lot of protests for the prices of gasoline. Many roads were blocked, which would mean that some of the girls couldn't go directly to their next destination. I went back to Santa Marta for a few days, to wait till Tayrona National Park would open again. They closed off for 2 weeks due to maintenance and rituals of the indigenous. I enjoyed the weekend here, joined the pub crawl, but most of all, rested a lot. Next, my journey will continue to Tayrona National Park. Minka and I will return to Cartagena.